Welcome back. So, if you or anyone you know has ever been in the thick of it with alcohol, you are intimately familiar with one question. It's this incredibly frustrating, maddening question, why can't I just stop? I mean, it's the thing you scream at yourself in the middle of the night, right? It's filled with all this shame and all these broken promises. You want to stop, you decide you're going to stop, and then somehow you find yourself drinking again. It feels like you're literally at war with your own brain. Well, today, we are diving deep into the neuroscience behind that exact feeling, and we're going to try and reframe this entire struggle. Okay, to really get a grip on the sheer force of this compulsion, let's start with a powerful analogy. I want you to imagine you are lost in the desert. It's been 5 days, no water. Your body is starting to shut down. You know with this cold, hard certainty that you are about to die.
This right here, this gets to the absolute heart of the problem. As addiction specialist Dr. Nicole Lauber points out, if someone appeared at that exact moment and offered you water, but told you it would cost you everything, your family, your job, all your money, you would take the water. You wouldn't even hesitate. And it's not because you're a bad person, it's because you literally wouldn't have a choice. See, when your primitive midbrain starts screaming survival, it completely hijacks your rational frontal cortex. That's the part that cares about your future, your family, all the important stuff. It just gets shut down. In that moment, the only thing that matters is fixing the immediate problem. And this is exactly what the addicted brain does, over and over and over again.
So, okay, how do we explain this overwhelming biological override? Well, for decades, the most common explanation we've had is the disease theory of alcoholism. And you know, this idea makes a lot of sense on the surface. It really does. It seems to explain why addiction can run in families, right? It points to a genetic link. And maybe most importantly, it validates that feeling of being completely out of control, like your free will has just been stolen by some physical illness. It's a very sensible, almost comforting explanation. But here's the thing. If we start to look a little closer, this whole explanation starts to show some pretty big cracks. The theory explains some things, yeah, but there are these critical facts that it can't account for. Sure, the disease theory is great for explaining things like genetics and relapse after years of sobriety. But addiction just doesn't act like other diseases. For starters, it has this incredibly slow onset. It can take anywhere from 2 to 20 years to fully develop. What other disease works like that? And then and this is the real kicker, research shows that up to 3/4 of people with alcohol problems eventually recover. And most of them, they do it without any formal treatment. That really doesn't fit the classic disease model we think of, does it?
So if it's not really a disease in the typical sense, then what is it? Well, there's another way to look at this, a different framework that offers a much more complete picture. It reframes addiction as a disorder of choice.
Now hold on, because this is so important. The word choice here has nothing to do with morality or willpower. This isn't about being a good or bad person, or being weak or strong. Not at all. Instead, this model frames addiction as a form of deep, almost supercharged learning. It's like through motivated repetition, the brain carves these super deep neural pathways that become this powerful, automatic habit. So how exactly does this deep learning work? Well, it literally rewires the brain's fundamental operating system. And in doing so, it creates this perfect trap that is unbelievably difficult to escape from. Okay, here's the vicious cycle. You drink alcohol, which is a depressant. Your brain, which always wants to stay in balance, fights back by releasing its own stimulants, stress hormones like cortisol. Then, when the alcohol wears off, those stimulants are still sloshing around, and they leave you feeling anxious, agitated, just awful. So what does your brain, which has learned this pattern, tell you is the quickest way to fix that awful feeling? Yep, more alcohol. The drink becomes both the poison and the perceived antidote. And this quote from author Catherine Gray just nails what that cycle feels like from the inside. Your inner voice, your own thoughts, become this relentless obsessive chatter. It feels like your thoughts aren't even your own anymore. They've been completely hijacked by this singular, desperate focus on getting more. And we're not talking about just one part of the brain going rogue here. As this deep learning takes hold, it recruits the entire network. Your perception gets rewired, so just seeing a bar or hearing a bottle open triggers a craving. Your thinking gets hijacked, so your plans start to revolve around your next drink. Your feelings get all tangled up with it, and eventually, your actions, the habit itself, becomes completely and totally automatic. Okay, that sounds pretty bleak, I know. But here is the most powerful, the most hopeful part of this new model. If addiction is a learned habit, no matter how deeply it's been carved into your brain, it means it can also be unlearned.
It offers a way out that isn't just about gritting your teeth and white-knuckling it for the rest of your life.
This changes everything. The goal is no longer a lifelong battle, this constant fight against temptation. The goal is to fundamentally change your unconscious beliefs about what alcohol does for you, to see the illusion so clearly that the desire itself just vanishes. So, what does that path actually look like? Well, it starts by consciously, deliberately seeing the illusion for what it is, recognizing that alcohol creates the very anxiety it pretends to cure. From there, you can actively work to dismantle all those false beliefs that alcohol has any real benefits. And finally, you reroute that powerful engine of desire toward new, healthier goals, until you get to a point where, as one person beautifully put it, abstinence meant relief.
So, where does this all leave us? It leaves us with a completely new way of looking at this entire struggle.
It's this: viewing addiction not as some inescapable, lifelong disease, but as a deeply, powerfully learned habit, a disorder of choice. Now, that shift in perspective is absolutely radical. It doesn't make it easy, not by a long shot, but it returns a sense of agency. It means that through understanding and deliberate relearning, we can change our brains and our lives. We can actually move from compulsion back to freedom.
But this leaves us with one final and really crucial question. We've talked about the process of learning addiction, but what is it about alcohol itself? What makes it such an incredibly effective and destructive teacher for our brains? In our next explainer, we're going to put the molecule itself under the microscope to find out.